Hello everyone, welcome to my update US gossip channel. Meri Brown had always thought she'd seen every kind of chaos the Brown family could produce, every argument, every betrayal, every heartbreak, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the full-blown disaster unfolding inside that overheated, overpacked Flagstaff courtroom as Sister Wives Season 20 reached its most shocking climax to date. A televised legal showdown that fans would later call the moment the entire Sister Wives universe cracked in half. It started the second Judge Dalton Peterson, stern-faced, uncompromising, and clearly fed up after hours of testimony, slammed his gavel and announced the words that sent the entire courtroom spiraling into pandemonium: Kody Brown, for the charges presented and the willful misconduct proven beyond reasonable doubt, this court sentences you to 22 years, and for a heartbeat, a whole suspended breath of disbelief, everything went still, the family frozen like wax figures carved in shock, until Meri, a woman who had endured decades of emotional whiplash, spiritual transition, divorce heartbreak, and Kody's constant excuses, let out a scream so raw, so guttural, so explosive that everyone from reporters to fans watching the livestream clutched their chests, because it wasn't a scream of victory or vengeance, it was a scream of pure disbelief, frustration, and the overwhelming weight of 20 years of family history detonating at once. She staggered forward, gripping the edge of her bench, tears streaking her cheeks as she shouted, 22 years? What is happening? Her voice high and cracking in disbelief, while Robin gasped loudly and collapsed into her hands, sobbing uncontrollably as the realization hit her that she was about to be left to navigate life without the husband she had clung to as her legal and spiritual partner. Christine, seated behind Janelle in a bold blue dress that screamed post-divorce confidence, exchanged a wide-eyed glance with her best friend turned fellow ex-wife, both women stunned even though neither of them had imagined the judge would take things this far, especially after a season's worth of escalating tension where Kody's outbursts, document probes, and financial missteps had been slowly, methodically documented for the court. Kody himself went sheet white, gripping the defense table with both hands, his signature mane, now trimmed shorter for court, falling around his face as his breath hitched in a pathetic mixture of shock and fury, because in his mind there was no universe, no realm, no timeline where he, Kody Brown, the once proud patriarch of a massive plural family, would be marched away in handcuffs like a criminal while cameras rolled. But the judge didn't give him time to protest, didn't glance at the defense attorney preparing to object, didn't hesitate for even a moment as he continued outlining the sentencing details: financial restitution, probation terms after release, and an immediate transfer to state custody. That's when fans watched Robin leap from her chair, nearly tripping on her long skirt as she threw herself toward Kody with a hysterical "No. No. You can't take him. He's not dangerous, he's just misunderstood. This family is under spiritual attack." But bailiffs intercepted her with gentle but firm hands as she trembled, begging them to reconsider, tears streaming down her chin as she choked out, "Please, he's my soulmate." A moment Christine would later describe in confessional as the exact drama Robin lives for. But even I didn't expect her to go full daytime soap heroine in front of a judge. Meanwhile, Janelle sat frozen, her jaw clenched, her hands clasped on her lap as though she were holding herself together by sheer will, because although she knew this was coming in some form, knew the hearings were not going well, knew the financial evidence piled against Kody was damning, she never imagined a sentence of this magnitude, and she whispered under her breath, "Gosh, Kody," with a mixture of pity, frustration, and disbelief. The camera then swung to Mykelti, who sat stiffly in the row behind her mother Christine, tightly holding Tony's hand as she processed the sentence, because even though she had distanced herself from Kody's drama in recent months, even she wasn't prepared for the surreal moment of watching her father be handed over 2 decades behind bars. Then, unexpectedly, an eruption. Savannah, Janelle's daughter, burst into tears so loudly it echoed through the chamber, and Gabriel, still grieving his brother and resentful of his father, stood up abruptly with an expression that hovered between rage and vindication, snarling under his breath, "He had this coming," causing gasps to ripple around the room. At that exact moment, Meri's meltdown deepened, her scream dissolving into frantic rambling as she stumbled down the aisle, not toward Kody, but toward the judge's bench, hands shaking, shouting things no one could fully make out over the chaos, something about justice, something about betrayal, something about how the Browns had never been treated fairly by the law or by each other. Bailiffs moved toward her immediately, trying to guide her back, but she yanked her arm away, trembling violently as she cried out, "This isn't right. This isn't how it ends. Kody doesn't deserve 22 years, he deserves to be accountable, sure, but this is insanity," her voice echoing as camera crews zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion, every tear glistening under courthouse lights, every tremble of her lips as she tried to gather herself. Kody, meanwhile, finally regained enough breath to shout, "This is a miscarriage of justice. I am the head of a family, you can't do this," but his voice cracked so pitifully that even the gallery murmured, uncomfortable, while the judge, clearly done with the theatrics, raised his gavel again and barked, "Mr. Brown, you will remain silent," a command that rang like a gunshot across the room. Robin continued to sob uncontrollably, whispering frantic prayers under her breath, her hands shaking so violently she could barely clutch her tissue, while Christine leaned over to Janelle and whispered, "Are we actually witnessing this?" To which Janelle whispered back, "I didn't want it to end like this, but he made so many choices that led us here," a line that would later trend across social media as the Janelle quote heard around the world. Outside the courtroom, hundreds of fans, reporters, activists, and onlookers stood packed behind barricades, watching the livestream on their phones as Meri's screams, Robin's sobs, and Kody's frantic objections echoed off the walls inside. Security tightened as more bailiffs entered the room, forming a shield around Kody as they prepared to handcuff him, and that's when the moment came that left the entire Sister Wives fandom speechless. Meri broke away from the bailiff restraining her and sprinted toward Kody, not to embrace him, not to attack him, but to stand between him and the officers, her arms spread wide as she shouted, "Stop. Just stop. You can't haul him away like this, let him say something to us, let him say something to his kids," her voice trembling, her face blotchy with tears, and Kody stared at her with an expression so stunned it almost bordered on gratitude, because despite everything, the years of emotional distance, the divorce, the heartbreak, the public humiliation, Meri was still, at her core, someone who fought for the principle of family, even when the family didn't fight for her. But the judge was unmoved. Lowering his gaze as he stated firmly, "Ms. Brown, step aside or you will be held in contempt of court," a threat that finally broke through Meri's hysteria long enough for her to step back, chest heaving as she watched officers clip cold silver cuffs around Kody's wrists. Robin let out a scream of her own then, sharp and piercing, before collapsing to her knees as Christine watched with wide eyes, stunned not just by the sentence but by the surreal theatricality of the entire moment. Kody, struggling to maintain some semblance of dignity, lifted his chin and muttered, "This family ruined me," a line that would instantly become the most replayed moment of the season trailer, while Janelle muttered under her breath, "No, Kody, you ruined yourself," her tone heavy but resolute. From there, the courtroom dissolved into even more chaos, reporters shouting questions, bailiffs clearing rows, Robin being lifted to her feet by a female officer as she sobbed, "He's my spiritual husband." Meri shaking uncontrollably against the wall, Christine pulling Mykelti into a tight hug, Gabe storming out, Savannah being escorted by Madison as she cried, Aurora and Brianna sobbing behind Robin, Solomon clinging to her arm, and the judge evacuating swiftly as security attempted to restore order. As Kody was physically guided toward the side exit that led to the detention area, he turned his head one last time, looking at the wreckage of the family he once commanded, the wives he once controlled, the children he once failed, and there was a flicker, just a flicker, of something like regret in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by anger as he hissed, "This isn't over," before being shoved gently through the door and disappearing from view. Outside, fans screamed, reporters swarmed, social media exploded, and inside the courtroom, Meri stood still, arms limp at her sides, eyes vacant, whispering to herself, 22 years, as Robin sobbed into her hands. Christine comforted her daughters, and Janelle stared at the closed courtroom door with a look of someone who knew that while the judge had rendered his sentence, the true fallout, the emotional, spiritual, and familial earthquake, was only just beginning. And just when the courtroom seemed to have reached the peak of its chaos, the drama escalated even further, because as Kody's cuffed hands were guided behind him, Meri, still trembling from the initial shock, suddenly spun around to face the gallery of onlookers, her voice rising above the murmurs and camera clicks in a way that made everyone freeze again. She shouted, "You all think this is entertainment, but this is our life. Our family. This is decades of pain boiled into one moment." And for a second, even the reporters hesitated, struck by the raw intensity of her outburst, as if every word cut sharper than a knife, leaving emotional wounds not just in the room but across living rooms and streaming screens nationwide. Robin, still kneeling on the polished courtroom floor, grabbed her wedding ring in her fist as though it were a talisman against the impending nightmare, whispering brokenly, I can't do this without him," while Christine leaned down to console Mykelti and Tony, who were now wide-eyed with fear and confusion, realizing that their once stable world of cameras, social media, and family gatherings had just been obliterated by a judge's ruling and decades of hidden family tension. Meanwhile, Janelle, who had sat so quietly moments before, now felt an intense surge of protective fury, standing abruptly, smoothing her dress as she made eye contact with the bailiffs, silently daring them to mishandle a single member of the family, because she knew firsthand how quickly order could descend into chaos if anyone tried to rush the Browns. And though she had often clashed with Kody, a part of her still felt the irreplaceable gravity of shared history, the weight of family blood, and the haunting memory of what had